All right, then, strap yourselves in, because today we're diving headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of the Wirral
The
Groan.
groan.
Oh, yeah, the Wirral Groan. It's this publication, kind of like a satirical newspaper, but honestly, reading it sometimes feels more like falling into a fever dream.
I see. I see.
And trust me, it gets strange. We're talking headlines like, Council approves dogging arena.
Oh,
Strange.
oh my.
Yeah, or how about BMX OAPs flip at bike lane flop?
Okay, so we're definitely talking tongue-in-cheek here. They're not afraid to get a little out there with their humor.
Right. You almost wouldn't think it's real, but that's what makes it so brilliant. It's what makes the groan so much more than just a cheap laugh.
You're right. There's a real art to this kind of satire. It reminds me a bit of Private Eye, using humor as a way to examine social issues, to hold a mirror up to society and say, look at yourselves.
Exactly. It's like they're highlighting the ridiculousness of everyday life in a way that makes you question what's real and what's satire.
Precisely. And often, the line can be quite blurry.
They really can. One of the things that totally cracked me up was this whole Breck epidemic they've invented.
Ah, yes, Breck.
Yeah.
The fictional drug that seems to be at the heart of every problem in the world.
Right. It's like their own version of spice or something. They've even got a whole backstory for it, claiming it's mined right there in the Wirral. Apparently, even the Vikings were
Oh,
hooked.
absolutely. And the groan milks it for all it's worth. Articles about Breck addiction, Breck-related accidents, even a council member proposing a Breck museum.
You'd swear they were dead serious if you didn't know any better.
That's the brilliance of it, though. They use this completely ludicrous concept of Breck to actually explore very real anxieties we face.
Yeah.
Addiction, economic hardship, that constant search for an escape from reality.
It's genius, really, and they weave it so seamlessly into these everyday situations. Like, remember that article about the council wanting to mine Breck as a way to solve their financial
Well, no,
problems?
absolutely classic. It's like they've tapped into the collective unconscious and pulled out all our deepest fears and anxieties and then just amplified them to an absurd degree.
And the fact that they do it through this local lens, this very specific rural lens, makes it all the more potent.
Absolutely, because even though it's rooted in the local,
Yeah.
those themes, those anxieties, they're universal.
They really are. And that's what makes the Groan so brilliant, so effective as satire.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's absurd, but it also makes you think. It makes you question things.
Exactly. And sometimes a little laughter is the best way to confront uncomfortable truths. And speaking of the Wirral Council, their antics are another goldmine of satire in these issues.
Oh, tell me about it. Like that article about them spending millions on those elaborate cycle lanes that no one uses.
I mean, the visual of a solitary pigeon perched on an empty bike lane is just chef's kiss.
They're always portrayed as this hilariously incompetent bunch, constantly making decisions that defy all logic and reason.
It's a brilliant way of highlighting misplaced priorities. And it doesn't stop there. They then propose selling off Birkenhead Park to some discount fun fair chain to make up for the budget shortfall.
Right. It's like they're allergic to sensible solutions. And don't even get me started on their solution for the Marine Lake.
90 years worth of junk fished out of there, including a submerged car. You'd think they'd be mortified.
But instead of acknowledging the utter neglect, their response is basically, well, at least you have a clean lake now.
The Groan's ability to perfectly capture that blasé attitude, that total disconnect from the reality of the situation, is what makes their satire so cutting.
It's like they're lampooning the bureaucratic tendency to prioritize appearances over actual solutions. You laugh, but it also makes you wonder about the very real implications of such an approach.
And that's the thing with good satire. It makes you laugh, but it also makes you think. Take, for instance, the article about them turning the Floral Pavilion, this beautiful seaside theater, into a 24/7 extreme sports arena.
I mean, MMA fights, indoor skydiving, crossbow firing range. Who comes up with this stuff?
It's pure chaos. And to add insult to injury, they want the Wirral Philharmonic playing live during the MMA fights.
Talk about a clash of cultures.
But on a deeper level, it speaks to a very real tension. We have this desire to preserve culture, but financial pressures often force us to make difficult choices. The Groan takes that dilemma, dials it up to 11, and presents us with this ridiculous scenario that forces us to question our priorities.
It's social commentary disguised as utter absurdity.
Hmm.
And speaking of absurd, we have to talk about those bizarre characters and urban legends that populate the Groan. Captain Steve Schitharg, the vigilante who protects the innocent from adrenochrome harvesting cruise ship tourists.
I mean, where do they even come up with this stuff?
That's where their satire transcends mere social commentary and delves into the realm of myth-making. These outlandish characters and situations aren't just there for laughs, they tap into something deeper, reflecting our collective anxieties and fascinations. So it's not just about poking fun at local quirks, it's about exploring something more universal.
Exactly. Take Captain Shithard, for example. He's this absurd figure,
Yeah.
right?
But he embodies this very real fear of exploitation, this desire for someone to protect us from unseen forces.
It's like the Groen is saying, look, we all have these fears, these irrational anxieties, even if we don't always acknowledge them.
And by giving those anxieties a face, a name, however ridiculous, it allows us to confront them, even if it's through laughter.
Precisely. And it's not just Captain Shithard. Remember Zulio Snotter, the artist who discovers the only way to get the council to remove rubbish is by turning it into fake Banksy pieces.
Oh, that's classic. It's a brilliant commentary on our obsession with celebrity culture and how even something as mundane as rubbish collection can become an art project if it means getting attention.
It's a fantastic example of how the Groen takes a seemingly simple premise and layers it with social commentary, forcing us to examine our own perceptions and priorities.
So we've talked about Breck, the council, Captain Shitharg, Zulio Snotter. It's a lot, right?
It really is. The Groen packs a lot into these issues.
They really do. But I guess the big question is, what's it all mean? What are they trying to tell us with all this, delightful chaos?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? The Groen doesn't give you easy answers. It's not a lecture. They're not telling you what to think.
It's more like, here's a funhouse mirror. Have a good look at yourself.
Exactly. It's warped, it's distorted, but you still recognize yourself in it somewhere. All those anxieties, those frustrations, even just the sheer ridiculousness of it all.
And maybe by laughing at it, by recognizing the absurdity, we find a way to deal with it.
Maybe even a little bit of comfort, knowing we're not alone and feeling like the world's gone a bit mad.
Right, like misery loves company. Except here, it's more like, hey, at least we can all agree this is totally bonkers.
Exactly. So next time you see a headline about a tsunami being unleashed on the Wirral to make way for a new shopping mall
Or a
or...
load of BMX granddads chaining themselves to the town hall in protest of, well, anything really.
Exactly. Just take a moment. Appreciate the absurdity. And then ask yourself, is it really that far-fetched?
Yeah.
Are we really so far removed from the world the Groen portrays? That's the question they leave us with.
And that is a wrap on our deep dive into the wonderfully weird world of the Wirral Groan. Until next time, keep questioning, keep laughing, and keep an eye out for the absurd. You never know where you might find it.